I'm Luke Shinney, CEO and founder of DAD.CEO. Today, I have the great honor to interview Justin Batt, who is the CEO of Daddy Saturday and Dad Boss. He is a successful serial entrepreneur, an international public speaker, namely at TEDx, and a multi-published author and a regular guest on multiple podcasts. Justin aims to disrupt fatherhood with intentionality by creating intentional fathers who raise good kids who will become great adults. He founded Daddy Saturday in his own backyard with his 4 children and has grown into a national movement engaging fathers across multiple channels, including YouTube, social media, the Daddy Saturday book, an Alexa skill, a podcast, merchandise, live events, and a foundation through which Justin plans to impact 10 million fathers in the next 10 years. This is our interview.
Justin, can you tell us a bit, you were talking about the crisis of being fatherless, and it's even more about with kids with parents that are actually not present, which is another version of fatherless, as you were saying. Do you want to talk about that just a little and give it more in the context of, with this whole pandemic and what's going on, is that becoming even more apparent now?
Yeah, I think, as I learned when I really started to dive into this topic of fatherlessness, I learned there were 2 forms of it. So you had the lack of a biological dad in the home, which I referenced in the TEDx. It's over 20 some million kids here in the US that don't have a dad physically living in the home. But even more prevalent is the child who has a dad who's physically there, but they're emotionally absent. And, that's the dad that I was really called to and compelled to go out and try and help, because I felt like through Daddy Saturday and our platform of being intentional and being engaged, I had an answer that I had found in my own family, because I was that dad for a period of time, right? I was a corporate America dad trying to manage it all, a family of 4 kids, my wife having her own business and trying to juggle all the balls at once, and found that I wasn't doing so well on my own in isolation trying to be that dad. And so, I really uncovered this deep-rooted issue here in our country as well as across the world, where there's a lot of fathers who are there in the kid's life. They're physically present, but they're emotionally absent. And, I think that is, in fact, even more damaging sometimes than the dad who isn't there altogether, because that dad, those kids learn to adapt and they have coping mechanisms, and it's hard. But, the dad's not there and they just come to terms with that. I think it's even harder for the kid who's got a dad who's there, but the dad's just not engaged. And so I just felt really called and compelled to create a plan, create a mission and a platform that could help reignite those dads, give them a pathway to being more intentional, more engaged, and getting involved in their kids' lives in the way that they were designed to do as their dad.
Okay. Do you have a work-life balance tricks that everyone seems to be searching for? Do you have the magical silver bullet, as we call it?
Yeah, I do. I think that it is that balance is a myth, and you don't ever establish balance. I think that there is a tension that is always going to exist between work and home, and that tension has changed dramatically now with COVID, because the integration of work and home is now really completely intertwined, because most people are working from home. And I think that's going to be perpetuated even when we get out of this high intensity COVID environment. So if that's not going to change, my silver bullet is the fact that it's not about ever achieving balance. It's about understanding how you manage that tension. And if you're able to manage that tension well, especially when those 2 are now intertwined, right? It's not like you came home from work now and you can turn one off and turn the other on. Right. You're at home. So I walk out of my home office and, when my kids are there, they're there. They're still in the house. And so you got to find a way to adapt with that. So the key is achieving, managing the tension. And how you manage the tension in my eyes is by being intentional. Imagine that. That's my answer. And how you be intentional around that specific environment is that you plan things on paper on purpose. So I have chosen to integrate my work life into my home life. I've taken a lot of the principles that I've done in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur, like establishing mission, vision, values, goal setting, a painted picture, and all of those tools that we use in business, I brought into my family. And so we set goals together. We establish our individual goals. We establish family goals. My kids set their goals at the beginning of the school year. My wife and I set ours at the beginning of the calendar year. We have a family mission statement, a family vision, our family values, and a painted picture of what I want my family to look like 20 and 30 years from now, because that's the trajectory with which I'm trying to raise my kids, right? It's not about the next year or 2 years. It's about the next 20 or 30 years and how I raise good kids that become great adults. And all of that ties back to how you manage that tension daily. Because, at the same time, you look at it and you're like, okay, now I've got my day. We're busy. You got a million things going on. Well, if it's planned on paper on purpose and you put a date night with your daughter, or you put, I'm going to go attend my son's ball game, or I'm going to have a date night with my wife, and you put that on your calendar and you hold it with the same intensity you would hold any important business meeting, and you're not going to miss the meeting. You're not going to be late. And when you're there, you're present and you're engaged. That in and of itself is a great way to manage the tension, because now you've helped compartmentalize your day so that when you're working, you're focused on that. And when you're done, you're there and you're present and you're emotionally engaged with your kids and your family.
Do you feel that mom CEOs have it harder than dad CEOs at balancing the work-life duties? And I'm going to continue a bit, but with the pandemic self-isolation, do you feel that dads have become, even though they've become more involved, are they getting a little bit too much credit for things that moms have been doing forever?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think that the way that I view it is there are very distinct roles for the role of the mother and the father in the home. And, I think that the role of the CEO is separate from that, right? A man or a woman as a CEO, they all have unique skill sets and abilities and talents. That's why they're in that position, right? Because they bring something unique to the table. They've risen to the top of their field. And so being a man or a woman as a CEO, I think is, they're the male and female piece of that. Yes, there are some small, maybe idiosyncrasies, but for the most part, right, you're a CEO and you do the job that you're called to do, and you use the talents you've been given to do that. I think in the home, it's very different, because in the home, there is a very distinct role between a mother and a father. And, there are things that in society that have changed over time. And I think as part of it is the stereotype, right? You look back and it was that disengaged dad, that the dad shaming that went on for so long, where dad came home from work, regardless of what level or position they were in, and dad had a beer in his hand and was watching TV or a drink and was checked out and just sitting there while mom cooked dinner and did the laundry and did all the things, even if she was a working mother, right? That was the stereotype that had been perpetuated. And I think that what really has happened is we've uncovered some of the ways that the real dads are out there doing it, and they are involved and they are participating and they are taking their share of the load, and they're dividing and conquering, which is what any good executive does, right? They delegate, they learn what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and they use their team and they're a leader in that capacity. And I don't think that changes at home, just like it doesn't change at work. And so all I think we've seen now is the unveiling, and with social media and with technology, we've just seen more of it, right? I've seen more dad dance videos and more dads being silly with the kids in the house than I think I've ever seen. And a big part of that is because they're there physically, and then you add to that, they're now present and engaged. And guess what? You're seeing the true form of a dad in the home. And I want to see more of that. I want to encourage more of that. And I hope that as we get back to this quote unquote new normal, that doesn't change. And to address your comment specifically, I would say that it is harder on a mom CEO, only in the sense that there are certain things that I think moms, they don't have to do, but moms just do because they're moms. It's what they are great at. And part of that is nurturing. And so, there's a piece of being a mom that is just different than being a dad. And if you're a mom executive, right, you've got a lot of responsibilities both at the office and at home. And so in those cases, a lot of times you may see the dad taking on some of the roles that the mom would historically play, because the mom has a really, really intense career and is very involved and engaged at the office. So dad has to step up. There's nothing wrong with that. I think as long as the delegation of the roles and the roles are being performed in the way that they're intended to be, mom and dad working in unison, where 1 + 1 = 3.
I was looking at your social media, and you recently bought a farm that I saw. Can you tell us, well, what was the reasoning for that? And was that more for the kids? Was that for you and your wife's dream? Or was there a farmer that was inside of you that always wanted your own farm?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a gentleman's farm at this point. So we're slowly adding animals, and I'm not doing a lot of the work yet, but we're getting there. So it's been a lifelong dream that we lived on land. We're able to raise our kids in a different way. I just believe that the Koch brothers actually years ago were talking about if you could hire an MBA, or if you could hire someone who grew up on the farm, which one would you hire? And the Koch brothers said, I'd hire the farm kid all day long over the MBA, because they've got grit, they've got real world experience, and and finishing a job until it's working job until it's completed, and hard work and discipline and all the things, where an MBA is just, basically gotten their education. And I loved that quote, and it's always stuck with me. And I grew up not on a farm, but in a farm community in Ohio in my youth. So I was exposed to that. And, my kids had grown up for the majority of their life at the beach, and it was a great environment to grow up at. But at the same time, you felt like you were living on vacation. And we just wanted to make a change. As an addition to all of that, we've launched an event venue on our primary residence. And so part of that goal was to build passive income through our primary residence and use that as a tool. And then through our foundation, our nonprofit, I'm also launching a program for youth. So late middle school, high school, and college age kids who come to the farm. They spend a couple of days with me. In fact, we just had our first class. We call it the Dad Boss Academy. We teach them the principles of faith, family, fitness, and finances, and really give them a reboot. And it's a way to help set them on a different trajectory, teach them things that they're not going to learn in normal life. And maybe that executive father who hasn't been there and been engaged, it's a great way for us to help inject into that child some of the core principles they need. And then for a child who maybe doesn't have a dad, which was the case, the two kids that were there this weekend with me in one of our first classes, they were on scholarship and they came in, we taught them all those principles, and they were able to learn a whole lot in a couple of days and come out of here with a different trajectory on their life. And so all of that was a part of this plan and process to get a farm where we could raise our kids in a different way, to build passive income in our primary residence, and to create an environment where we could use it as a stewardship and as a blessing to other people that may either not have a father or have a disengaged father, as a way to teach them some core principles around life.
Do you feel that it's smart for a parent to invest in their kid's business, or should the kids actually go out and earn it on their own while still having the support of mom and dad?
I'll answer the question in two parts. So I think it's really important, and we encourage all of our kids and anyone that comes through our academy, we work with them on starting their own business. And I feel like it's really important in today's day and age that our kids with technology, they're so apt to just be consumers. And so, I've taught our kids to be curators and content producers. And part of that is by owning their own business. And most of our kids have online businesses. And, that's a really important core aspect of our family as well as our platform. So I think that's first and foremost, that every kid, today's paper route may be that they're a YouTuber, right? Or they're producing content, or they still mow lawns and do the things that we used to do, but it doesn't matter. The point is they have to go through and learn the principles of entrepreneurship, because there's so much to be learned. So from a parent's standpoint, there is multiple levels of investment. There's the investment in helping them form the idea for what their business should be. There's the investment of your time, right, and helping them form that business and get that underway. There's the investment of some money. So maybe they have to have some startup capital in order to do that. And you help them with that. I think there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're a part of the plan and the process, and you've helped them build a business plan. You've taught them how to set goals, and you've taught them how to do basic principles of marketing or communication, right? All those things are so valuable. So why would you not want to invest in that? We spend such frivolous money on our kids in such ridiculous ways, buying them shiny plastic things. Why would we not want to spend some money in helping them invest? Another thing that I've done with our kids is my middle son, Mason, he wanted to start he's very into like stocks and investing, and he's saving all his money. So I said, dude, I love that you're saving. That's great. But just saving money and putting it under your mattress isn't going to make it grow. So we started talking about the rules and principles of investment. And we got an app that you can invest in micro shares. So he can buy fractional shares of companies that he's interested in. And so he had his own money. I helped him with a little bit of knowledge, but there's really limited risk. So he can go out and buy a share of Apple or Nike or whatever, Amazon, whatever he's interested in, and he can buy a fraction of the share, right? So he can invest his own money in a small amount and learn the process of investing, learn how stocks appreciate and grow and why he wants to invest in those companies. And there's tons of value in that. So I would say yes, invest in your kids starting a business and help invest in that process. And there is so much growth to happen there. And if more kids were given that opportunity earlier on, society would be in a very different place.
But do you find that, this is a conversation I was having with my wife the other day, is maybe in the States, you have this, but why are we not teaching our kids this in school? basics of taxes, investing, and all this. It seems like we're learning everything else except what the fundamentals of actually operating in a real world is.
So I had the kids that came through the Dad Boss Academy over the weekend, and yesterday they had to join virtual school. And so I was listening to them before they flew back home. I was listening to their conversations with their teachers, and they were sitting in front of a computer screen on virtual school. Their school is several states away from where they were here with us. And I was listening to the content, and I'm like, this is great if they want to be a scientist. This is great if they want to go on and learn about history and culture. And that's all. I love some of that. That's great. But nothing that I heard was teaching them anything about character traits or character building or real life. And I think that's the failing of so much of our education system, not just in the US, but around the world, is that you rarely find any of that unless you've got a teacher who's just stepping up and stepping out of the norm. Because in the States, excuse me, we teach to a standard. We teach to a lesson plan. We teach to a core curriculum, and they're all moving the kids in public education towards that. So unless you get into private education or a hybrid education scenario, your kids are not going to get that. And it falls back on the parents. And then it goes back to our first part of our conversation where you have either a fatherless generation or you have disengaged parents, and the kids just aren't getting that, which is why we've launched the Dad Boss Academy, which is why we're launching Dad Boss Coaching, so we can teach kids those principles around core character qualities they need to possess to be successful in life and have the experience and exposure to things around faith, family, fitness, and finances that they're not going to get anywhere else, especially at school.
I'm going to refocus back on you a little bit and your growth and your growing up, basically. What top 3 lessons, or 1 or 3, did your father, mother, or a mentor actually leave you with that you feel are still very relevant in today's digitally connected world?
Yeah, I think that, growing up, my dad was very involved with me in terms of just the time that he would spend with me. He had a really rough upbringing. And so it was one of those things like he wanted to do better for me than, had been done for him and those kinds of things. And so he just spent a lot of time with me. And a lot of it was simple time. It was playing catch in the backyard with a baseball or a football. It may be just helping him wash the car or do yard work. So it was very simple things. And so the lesson there and what I've taken and brought into Daddy Saturday is that to be intentional and engaged with your kids, it doesn't have to be expensive, extravagant, or extraordinary to be epic. I think that's a really important skill set. Now, my dad didn't call it that, right? That's not what we did, but that's what I took from that experience with my own father. And that some of the best memories I have with my dad were some of the most simple times that we just spent together. And it was the time that he invested with me. So I think that's first and foremost one of the things that really translates well into today's day and age, that in this digital age, right? We need to get back to some of those more simple times together and just doing more practical things with our kids. Board game nights, playing card games, going for a bike ride or a walk, just laying. We have a trampoline. We lay on our trampoline and look up at the clouds or the stars in the evening sometimes and just talk and laugh and wrestle and do all those things. And that's what some of the best memories I have with my kids are. So that's one. I think another one is that Dave Ramsey was a digital mentor of mine at an early age, and I followed a lot of what Dave's principles were around finances. And I think one of the things that I learned a lot from Dave was the power of being intentional with your money. So planning it on paper on purpose and budgeting and taking some of those simple practices that, again, in today's digital age, everybody needs an app or some sort of accounting software or something really sophisticated. And it's like, you know what? You get out a piece of paper and you draw the ledger on the left side. It's deposits and it's withdrawals, and you make your budget, right? And you line item it, and you don't have to be sophisticated. There are things if you want to use technology, but there are also ways that you don't. The point is that it's behavior that matters. And then the principle that came from that was that feelings follow behaviors. Behaviors don't follow feelings. And that was another core principle that I learned from Dave, in that I never felt like doing a budget. I never felt like working out, frankly, in the mornings, but I've worked out for more than 25 years very consistently, almost every single day outside of injury. And I've also done a budget and planned our finances as a family pretty consistently. I wouldn't say I've been perfect, but the point is that I never feel like it, but I just do it. And when you force yourself to do something, the feelings end up following it. The feeling of satisfaction that you've planned your money on paper on purpose before the month begins. The same thing with fitness, right? That you've gone and exercised, you've got your endorphins going, you feel better about yourself. So therefore you make better choices throughout your day regarding what you eat and how you sleep and other factors, because you've invested in yourself, and feelings follow behaviors.
Has there been times where you've seen your kids, even though you have a very close relationship and you're very open with them in being an advisor, but a father, but have you seen them about to make a mistake and you purposely held back because they needed to make the mistake in order to learn?
Man, this is one of my favorite topics, Luke. I'm so glad you brought it up. And if I can, I'll go on my soapbox for a second here and just talk about this, because I feel like this is one of the biggest challenges facing this generation that's coming up, and the generation behind them, frankly, because what's happened is we as a society, and especially as fathers, have tried to become the hero of our kid's story, whether that's through validation or because that's the role we think we're supposed to play. A lot of times we prevent our kids from failing. And you've heard the terms, the helicopter parent, the snowplow parent, the bulldozer parent, right? There's a million different terms. And all that means is the parents are stepping in and removing the opportunity for the child to experience success or failure on their own. And so my viewpoint is that the parent needs to step forward as the guide, especially the father, and allow the kid to be the hero of their own story, experiencing success or failure on their own. And as a result, they get to learn from that experience, and they get that early exposure to it. And the father or the parent is there to serve as the guide to help them through that process. So they help them learn about how to experience failure, to fail forward, to fail fast, right? To fail often, but to fail in terms of micro failure, so that they can learn from those failures and move forward towards success. And the big thing is that failure at 8 is way different than failure at 28. And what we've now seen is all these kids that have grown up in a society where they haven't been able to experience failure because they've been protected and preserved from that. They get into young adulthood or adulthood. Now they experience a significant failure, right? A job loss, a divorce, a disease, whatever it may be, financial issues. And they don't know how to deal with it because they've never experienced failure before. They have no coping mechanism for how to handle it. And so you've got a generation of kids that don't know how to fail. And that is a problem, because most people that you see that are successful today are standing on top of a mountain of failures. And that's how they've gotten to that point of success. And so that's, again, goes back to that conversation about kids starting their own businesses, right? Or participating in competitive sports, because all those environments are training grounds for experiencing failure if the parents allow the kids to experience that on their own, serving as their guide along the way. I'll give you a specific example. So there are plenty of times in our family now where we call it Failure Fridays. So a lot of times we'll talk on Friday evenings around the dinner table, and we'll have a conversation of how we tried something and failed that week and what we learned from it. And if the kids aren't talking about something they tried and failed at, that means that they weren't pushing themselves that week. And I have to participate. My wife participates, and we're all in on discussing failure openly and candidly as a family, and we're there to support each other and help each other move forward. So there's plenty of chances where we keep it top of mind. And it's always hard as a parent. It's not an easy thing to do to allow your kid to fail, right? It's like letting them fall off the bike for the first time, or letting them, that's the common scenario you think of. But there are so many circumstances where your child fails. And I'm coaching flag football right now. So my 2 youngest boys, I'm their coach. And we had a scenario this last weekend where there was the perfect play call. I called it up for my son. He was on defense. It was a 4th and 1 situation, meaning if they got the 1 yard, they got a first down, a new set of plays. If we stopped them, then we got the ball back, and we needed the ball because we were behind in the game. And so I called the play up. My son went for the play, and he dove, and he missed the player. He was there. He had a chance to make the play. He missed the flag. They got the first down, and we ended up losing the game. Obviously, losing the game wasn't his fault. It was one play amongst many, but he had a chance to step up and either have success or failure. But I put him in the situation, and I allowed him to determine the outcome based on his own result, right? And I didn't dictate anything other than calling up his number to make the play. And after he failed, we had a conversation after the game, and we talked about what he may have done differently and how he could have had a different outcome. And he learned from that scenario. And I guarantee you, the way he's built, it won't happen again, because that's just how he is. But at the same time, I preserve the relationship over the result. And I think that's a really important piece about failure that parents need to understand, is that after the game, we still went out and got ice cream. We still have that father-son relationship. And I wasn't critical of him for not having the success on that play. Didn't blame the loss on him, right? We talked about the situation, we isolated it, he learned from it, and we moved on. And our relationship was still intact. I think it's a really important piece that a lot of parents need to understand is that watch yourself and check yourself at how much you're putting the relationship over the result or the result over the relationship, and being critical of your kids after they have a failure or they don't live up to your standard. Preserve that relationship first.
The word no is really a powerful word in business. But does it work equally well in your house, or is yes the opposite for you? Or is yes, as one of my ex-CEOs that I was talking to, his daughter, he says, the boys, I can deal with the no with them, but my daughter, I can't say no to.
So we've had this discussion recently in our household, and it's acutely on my mind. I would say that you would say no more often than you would say yes, and it's easier for me than my wife. I am not afraid of conflict. And in fact, I'm a challenger myself by nature. And I've got two of my boys that are extreme challengers. So I just know that if half the time they're just going to challenge. And so I'm used to saying no to them because I know that's just their mentality. But I've understood my kids' personality style. So I know how to say no to them. I think that's an important piece. Because if you just blankly say no, and you've got a child who's a challenger, you've now drawn a line in the sand. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to keep bumping up against that line to push you. So you've got to understand that you can't just say no to a challenge. You got to say no, and then you either provide an alternative or explain why you're saying no. You know, the old adage of you say no, and they say, well, why? And you say, because I'm your parent or because you live in my house. Like, I don't think that works for most kids. You need to have an explanation, especially as they get older, of why you're saying no. And the other piece of this is that no can also preserve your best yes. And with kids, let's talk about diet right now. So diet is a big one. Kids will talk about, they want to eat fast food. They want the convenience of just getting something on the way home from school or when they're out and about. And, as a family, we've just made a commitment that we eat dinner together at home. And we don't believe that fast food is the best option that you can have. It's not to say we don't ever eat fast food. We're at Chick-fil-A at least a couple times a week. That's big here in the States, especially in the South. But at the same time, right, we make that yes, we preserve that yes for when it's the best opportunity. And we also ask our kids to earn the yes. So we believe that nothing is in life is given, it's earned. And so this morning, in fact, my daughter asked to go to Starbucks for breakfast and to get a egg, bacon, cheese Gouda sandwich. It's what she loves. And she was literally digging her heels in, saying, I'm not going to eat anything for breakfast this morning. We have nothing in the house, even though we have plenty of groceries, because she wanted to go and get an egg, bacon Gouda. And we'd already made the commitment to say, we're only going to go out for breakfast one day a week, and it's a special treat, and you guys have to earn that. You earn that by getting ready for school. You earn that by making your beds. You earn that by doing the things that you're asked to do around the house. And if you do those things, then we'll go out and we'll get breakfast. If you don't, we won't. And so I also make my no where I've got some leverage behind my no, because now it's not just me saying no to say no. I say no because they didn't do what they were supposed to do or asked to do. And now how are they going to argue with that? Because it's really simple. And I asked them to think critically and say, well, look, had you guys done this, we could have done that, but you didn't, so we're not. And it's real quick that they learn through that process. The last story I'll tell around this is it's really important to also flip that around, and you can also get ahead of the no's. And so how I get ahead of the no's, and my wife is also brilliant at this, is when we see one of our kids do something right, proactively on their own without being asked, we reward the heck out of it. And so one of my middle son, he got up, he made his bed like the military. His room was completely clean. He was ready for school. He'd done everything he'd been asked to do. And he also proactively unloaded the dishwasher on his own. And so we rewarded him big time. He went to the store and he got this massive Nerf gun, which was really big for him. And he came home with that. And the other boys and my daughter were like, why did he get that Nerf gun? And it gave us a chance to say, well, because he did this, 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 and this without being asked. And man, you should have seen them. They were so upset because they didn't get a toy, but they also saw the reason why he got the toy. And so that helps establish the fact that you can preempt a no, because now when they do the right things, it's so much easier to say yes and reward that behavior instead of having to say no for things that they're not doing.
But are you sure that you didn't want the Nerf gun?
Well, I have mine too. I have the biggest and best Nerf gun.
To a lighter side, you were saying that you work and your farm is part of your work, but also your home and, Daddy Saturday and Dad Boss and that. But when everything is under one roof, or one area, should I call it, how do you unplug with your kids and family that actually might surprise us?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to intentionality. And, even I still struggle with this. Like I said, it's never, balance is never fully achieved. It's a pendulum, it swings back and forth, and it's about managing that tension. And I have had so many things going on for so long in my life, and I've just become very good at compartmentalizing things. And the way that I've done it, and maybe this will surprise people, maybe it won't, but it's a great tip. It's worked well for me, is I've got my 4 big buckets, my life buckets, and it goes back to faith, family, fitness, and finances. And so if what I'm doing doesn't fit into one of those 4 buckets, then I very quickly need to cut it out of my life and remove it. And so I've just compartmentalized my time so much into those 4 buckets that I find myself not wasting a lot of time. And sometimes my wife will get on me and she'll say, you never take downtime, or you're never just chilling out. And, I've put myself in a position where in the free time that I have, it allows me to engage my kids. I think the other thing is that I've used time that could be considered unproductive time, and I've made it productive time with my kids. So, for example, dinner time, instead of just being how fast can we sit down and eat, we do some things together as a family where we play a game called either Would You Rather or Table Topics, where we go around and we ask questions and we use that as a way to create dialogue and build a relationship together as a family. So it's productive time while we're eating dinner together as a family. Car time, typically very unproductive time, right? You're listening to music, the kids are on devices, whatever it is. We don't do that, right? We're talking, we're playing games, we're having conversations. So we're using that time together to be productive and to grow the relationship and build each other up as a family. And then I'm very also intentional around one-on-one time with my kids. Having 4 kids, it's also difficult to get them one-on-one. They all want my attention all the time. My daughter's a pre-nager at 12 years old, so she wants to be alone a lot of her time in her room doing her thing. And so I'm also very intentional around scheduling that one-on-one time. And that really helps, because then you get the kids one-on-one, it opens dialogue, opens communication, their true personality comes out because you don't have the dynamics of the other siblings. And that's really helped me be intentional and use my time wisely for each of my kids. And we're very intentional around also doing what makes the most sense to them, whether it's breakfast in the morning early or going out for ice cream later at night, or something as simple as taking the dog out for a walk right together. We focus on that. So I think a lot of it just comes back to making the highest and best use of my time when I'm at home with my kids and being able to shut it down. The last thing I would say is, technology can be a blessing and a burden. And I'm working my hardest and doing my best to put boundaries in place so that when I'm with my kids, my technology is put away. And I think that's the other big thing, is that can be such a distraction tool. So even though you're there with your kids, if you're still using technology, or they see you dodging your eyes back to your phone to answer an email or a quick text or look at something on social media, right? That's not being fully present and engaged. So I've also worked on time that I've had, even if it's 15 minutes with the kids one-on-one or together, right? That time is fully there, fully dad, fully present.
Fantastic. I asked you this question, but if you just in a quick way, is there any traditions that you've taken from your father, from your parents, that you've passed down to your kids, or is there a new tradition that you've created that's uniquely yours?
Yeah, so we have some family traditions. I guess around the holidays, we tried to pull forward just to keep some of those things alive. There are things that, like, together we decorate the Christmas tree and we put up all the silly ornaments the kids have made over the years. So there's things like that we do around the holidays that are family traditions. But for the most part, I have created a lot of my own traditions, and some of them are what people would call crazy. One of those traditions is every morning before school, we've got a hill that's our driveway leading up to our house. And the hill is about just shy of 400 feet of elevation gain over the hill. And so every morning We walk down the hill. We call it our driveway devotion. And we walk down the hill to the mailbox. And we walk all the way back up the hill before the kids leave for school. And that tradition is meant to be a way to help them conquer something or achieve something at the beginning of their day and overcome an obstacle. Because it's not an easy, it's a big climb. Your legs are burning at the top. You're breathing hard. And they do that every morning. And then on Wednesdays, because it's, hump day, quote unquote, you got to get through the middle of the week. I make them carry heavy stuff. So they carry rocks, they carry sandbags, they carry kettlebells in their book bags, and they march down and up the hill. And the craziest thing is, we did it a couple of times, and they ask me now. And they're like, Dad, is it heavy day? Dad, it's heavy day. Dad, we're doing the hill this morning. Let's go, Dad. So they're now proactively asking me to do it because they see the value in it. We have amazing conversation, and it's become a really incredible tradition for our family. And it's something that, we will look back on. And when life gets hard, when times are hard, whether they're in the home or out of the home, they're going to look back and they're going to remember those hill moments. They're going to remember what Dad said. And the one part of the hill that I love is the steep incline. And they've been trained to say, when we get to that point of the hill, is this the hard part or the easy part? And most people would say it's the hard part. My kids say it's the easy part, because the power of the spoken word is so powerful. And what you speak over yourself, what you speak out loud becomes true in what you believe in life. And so that principle, they exemplify that every single day when they get to that point of the hill and they say, here's the easy part, and they climb over it. So no matter what obstacle comes across their day, they can now overcome it because they've done it that morning.
When you're much older, how would you like to be remembered as a CEO, a leader, and how would you like to be remembered as a father?
That's an awesome question. So I've done a painted picture for both. And, I have set a dream for myself as a CEO to reach 10 million fathers in the next 10 years and to end fatherlessness. That's my, corporate philanthropic goal. And we have a for-profit and a nonprofit. So the goal is to reach that many people on the nonprofit side, but on the for-profit side, it's to be listed on the Inc. 500, 5,000 list as a fatherhood-focused organization, and have the for-profit side be recognized as a top company, and it's in the fatherhood space, which I think is really unique and an incredible goal. And so as a CEO, I want to be seen as someone who has bridged the gap between fatherhood and the corporate world or business, and has brought the two together, has helped a ton of people, and has changed the world in this generation in the way that they look at fatherhood and look at family and look at being an intentional and engaged father, and made a tremendous impact in the lives of a lot of people. So that's how I see the CEO side, as someone who has created a legacy of stewardship around fatherhood. On the family side, I have a painted picture, and it's my family 20, 30 years from now. And I look at all my kids for the long game. So I'm about to turn 40 in January. So who do I want my kids to be when they're 40, right? And notice I said, who do I want my kids to be, not what do I want my kids to be, right? Or what do I want them to be doing? Because to me, it's far more important about who they are than what they do. So I want to be seen as a father who has invested in my kids, who's been intentional, who's been engaged, who's created epic memories that we talk about and they remember for the rest of their lives from our time together. And as a father who helped them identify what their unique calling is in life, and who gave them the platform to jump off of so they can go out and get it and help change their generation with what they've been given and what they've been called to do.
What would be your top X amount of tips for being a successful dad CEO on balancing it all?
So again, I think you've got to be intentional in every single area and aspect. That word is, you're going to hear me say the word over and over and over again, right? It's why it's the title of the book, because that's the core character quality of being a successful dad CEO. You have to be intentional, and you've got to take what you do at work and bring the positive aspects of that into the home. So the first thing is direction, not intention, determines destination. Andy Stanley has that quote. I love that quote, because as a CEO and as a father, the direction of the company, the direction of your family determines the destination. So we just talked about how you want to be remembered as a CEO, how you want to be remembered as a father, right? The direction that you set your family in, the direction you set your company in is going to determine the outcome. It's not the intentions that you have. Intentions aren't enough. They don't matter, frankly. So setting that direction by having a true north, having a compass, having mission, vision, values, goals, right? That you set for your business and you set for your family. And then you work towards accomplishing those, and you work backwards just like you would do in your company. And you say, okay, for this year, Here's our annual goals. Well, then what am I going to do this quarter? What am I going to do this month? What am I going to do this week? What am I going to do today, right? To move along that threshold. And you start to put those simple things in place in your life and in your family and in your kids' life. And that is how you move forward. The second piece is to plan it on paper on purpose. We've talked about that a little bit, but I think I can't overemphasize it enough. We have a planner. It's called the Dad Boss Planner. It's based on Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner. Sold over 100,000 copies. It's one of the top selling planners ever. We white labeled it for Dad Boss. And so we've given them a tool that they can use to do that, right? To put their goals and to plan their day on paper on purpose, and to put those family events in that planner and to hold those with the same amount of accountability and the same amount of importance as you would any business meeting or any business opportunity. So that's the second thing. And then the final thing is to create the boundaries that are going to help you manage the tension. Put away technology, create the setting and the scenarios where you can have that intentional and engaged family time and you're not using technology. For me, it's on Saturdays, right? That's when I can set aside, instead of golfing, instead of doing what's important to me, I focus on what's important to my kids and spending time with them intentionally. Because look, you have a limited time with your kids. The average child has just over 930 weeks in the home. So if your child's 9 years old, they're already halfway gone from your house. My daughter's 12. She has 6 years left in our home. You have such a limited time to truly impact and make the impression on your kids to help them be successful in life. And so you got to take advantage of every opportunity you have. And then remember, it doesn't have to be expensive, extravagant, or extraordinary to be epic. And your kids are going to look back and remember those epic memories and moments. And the final tip would be travel with your kids and do it one-on-one. We do it at 10, 13, and 16 years old. It's called Winner's Travel. That's what we call it. And again, doesn't have to be expensive, extravagant, or extraordinary. It's based on your budget. We're fortunate to have the means to do some really cool things. My daughter and I have gone to New York City, saw 3 Broadway shows in 3 days, toured the birthplace of hip hop, and ate at some fabulous restaurants and did what's important to her. I learned more about my daughter in 72 hours together one-on-one than I had in 12 years of her life, 10 years at that point of her life. And it was an incredible opportunity. We still talk about that trip to this day, and it was a building block and a catalyst for our relationship. And it's never too late to start. So if your kids are past that point, do it anyways. It's never too late to engage your kids in that capacity, and they will look back and talk about those memories and those trips for the rest of their lives.
Do you have any last words of wisdom that you feel is important for dads out there to think about and implement, or any advice? It's a blank sheet for you.
I would say that something really important is, as a CEO, as an executive, your kids are going to catch far more from you than you can ever teach them. So what they see you doing, how they see you live your life, the behaviors, the morals, the values, the way you approach life, they're going to learn far more from watching you than they ever will by what you teach them. So the way you approach your faith, the way you approach your health, your diet, exercising, the way you treat other people, the way you treat your wife or you treat your husband if you're a female CEO, right? Your kids are going to learn, and this applies equally to male or female, right? To mother or father. Your kids are going to learn far more from you. Far more is caught than taught. And so the importance of modeling for your kids is paramount, and letting them in and letting them see you in your element, in your environment, is also critical. So let them into your business conversations. Let them see, have those conversations with your kids, teach them through those moments, but also let them catch from you in the everyday things that are so important for helping them establish great values and habits and rituals that they can build on for the rest of their lives. Because if you're not doing it, they're not going to do it either, right? How can you expect your kids to do things that you're not doing yourself? If it's making their bed in the morning, but your bed's a mess, then why would they make their bed, right? You're not living that out. If they see you making your bed every day, then they're going to do the same thing. If they see you eating healthy and exercising and taking care of yourself, that will become a habit that they aspire to do as well, because they see that in you, right? If they see that you are sacrificing and giving up things that are hard in life, they're going to do the same thing and make those same decisions because they see that it's important to you, and they're going to follow in that suit. If you're taking a stand for morals and values where it's important to you, they will do the same thing and feel comfortable doing that. So far more is caught than taught. Be the example you want to see in your kids. That is paramount. That cannot be replaced. And that is something that, that's on you as a CEO, as a leader. And that applies equally in the workplace as it does in home. But I think it's even more important in the house because your kids are so perceptive. They're sponges and they're taking everything in, whether you realize it or not. A great question to ask your kids, regardless of their age, and start this question early is, what does daddy do? What do you think dad does, right? What is dad's job? And let them answer that question open-endedly and hear what they have to say. And it'll be really revealing to you. When they're younger, it's really funny, right? Because oftentimes they have no idea what you do. And it's hilarious to see some of their answers. But as they get older, oftentimes, I've even found that they don't know. They don't understand what you do. And so then I'll put it into context for them. And it's really cool because, if you do it right, you give your kids your why. So like I'm in the publishing industry, right? I'm associate publisher for a company. And so what I do is I tell my kids, they'll say, Dad, what do you do? And they're like, well, you're a publisher. I'm like, right, but what does that mean? Right. And I say, I help people share their stories with the world by becoming an author. I help people grow their business by helping them create a book, right? And I'm an author and they're on the front cover of the book, so they understand that process. But for them, that's really cool because now when someone asks, they say, what does your dad do? And my dad's a publisher. He helps people tell their stories and share those with the world. Like, that's really cool. That's what I want my kids saying about what I do, right? My dad owns a fatherhood foundation, and he helps dads be better dads, and he helps kids grow up and tackle the problems of the world, right? That's what they say now because we've had those conversations. And then beyond that, I think it's great to be able to take your kids into some of those environments. So, you'll take your kids to work day. That's really cool. It's harder now that we're working from the home, right? They see you on Zoom all day. So a quick tip there, just to throw this in there as an aside, my kids, especially when this first started, they'd come blowing into the office when they were home. They're back in school now, but when they were home, they'd come flying into the office and I'd be on a call like this. And the rule was, if you come in and interrupt, that's fine, because we all live in an open workplace today, but you got to come join the call and you got to introduce yourself. And then you gotta sit there and be on the call. And it happened one time, and my daughter did it, and she was so embarrassed that I made her join the call and introduce herself. And the person then was laughing so hard, they thought it was so great. They're like, I'm doing that with my kids. And guess what? They never interrupted me again. And I'd put an orange cone outside of the office door eventually and say, look, if the orange cone's out there, it just means that I'm on a call. So again, if it's important, you can come in. But if you come in, you're going to be on the call with me. And so they got to recognize that. But, that's a small thing. It's simple. It's funny. But it's a way to incorporate them in your day. My kids have seen me speak on stage in my environment. And that's an honor. It's a gift for them to be able to see that and see what I do. So yes, to answer your question, I think it's very important that you let your kids see what you do, understand your why, and unpack that a little bit. And then from the financial perspective and all that you have and all that you do, I think the way that you can do that there is just by giving them perspective. So, it's always the kids in Africa or whatever, right? We try and talk about the kids that don't have anything. And if they haven't experienced that, they have no perspective. So there's an aspect of service. There's an aspect of perspective you can give your kids that'll help break that entitlement by doing a mission trip or serving in your local community or getting them outside of their element to be exposed to something that they can see others who don't have what you have or what you've provided for them and give them that experience and that exposure. And I think the best CEOs, the best dad CEOs are really good at that. And it taps into that service or philanthropic aspect of many CEOs that they have, right? A lot of them are givers. A lot of them are very generous people, but we don't often pass it on to our kids. So create traditions, create environments, create ways that you can allow your kids that perspective or that experience so that when you have that conversation, you're not just holding it over their head. You're using that perspective to offer and break through that element of entitlement by changing it to gratitude.
Justin, thank you very much for the great interview. And we look forward, well, myself personally, I look forward to speaking a bit more about, with you on some different subjects as we go along. And I'm definitely going to be following. I have been following, actually, and especially your TED Talk, which is included in this presentation. I think this is one worth actually sharing and actually discussing a bit more. So, Justin, thank you for everything.
Yeah. So thanks, Luke. The easiest way to find me is at Justin Batt on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me personally. And then on all their social media, it's at Daddy Saturday or at the Daddy Saturday. And then I have a website for Daddy Saturday, daddysaturday.com. That is the hub for all things Daddy Saturday, the foundation. You can learn about all of our work there, all the resources we have to support dads in their efforts to be more intentional and engaged. And then DAD.CEO.com is the site for our digital course on fatherhood, as well as the coaching platform, the planner, and the Dad Boss Academy, which is also launching. So you can find out more there at DAD.CEO.com.